This is Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby, and you're listening to the Love, Happiness, and Success podcast. So listen, all relationships can have challenging moments, and that is part of the experience. What matters more is our ability to navigate these with clarity, with confidence, and with skills, because we can often turn things around and bring out the best in any relationship if we know what to do. And my guest today is therapist Elliott Connie, who has over 20 years of experience helping couples do exactly that. Elliott is the author of The Solution-Focused Marriage and also has a new book out focused on how to change your questions so that you can change your future. We have much to discuss, Elliott. So let's just dive right into this. When it comes to couples and the things that can lead to communication breakdowns in a relationship, what, in your experience, are some of the usual suspects that create those problems? And then we can open the door to talking about some of the solutions that I know you specialize in.
So this answer might surprise you, but I don't know. I don't spend a lot of my time thinking what are the origins of people's problems, because I don't find that to be a useful kind of question for me. Somebody asked me, I was at a conference speaking recently, and somebody asked me why do I think marriage is so hard, or why do I think relationships can be so challenging? And I know they want me to say, because communication issues start like this, or this, because men do these things and women do these things. But my honest answer is I think relationships are challenging because every single relationship in the history of human life is one imperfect human marrying another. And when you have two imperfect people in a relationship, you are going to have problems, roadblocks, challenges, and obstacles. I just don't find it useful, really, to think about those. I think the most useful thing to think about is what do the people in the partnership want, and what would life look like if they were both getting meaningful things that they want. That's what I think is a much more useful way. So at some point over my nearly 20 years of practicing psychotherapy, problems have become meaningless to me. It's like my brain has broken to the point of problems becoming meaningless. Now, I don't mean that in an absence of empathy way. I know people have them. And I know problems impact people's lives and problems impact people's relationships. I'm not cold-hearted in the way that I say that. But what I mean is I'm not curious about problems, so thus I don't investigate them. Because I don't think that's a useful endeavor for me.
I love that. So behold, everyone, a solution-focused therapist. This is no, seriously. Okay, so Elliott, we are just meeting each other. You don't know this about me yet, but I'll tell you my background. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I am also a psychologist, so well-versed in kind of, standard issue therapy. And probably about 10 years ago, I actually shifted into coaching psychology for some of exactly the same reasons. I think that there is a zeitgeist in therapy for a long time, and certainly now, where people spend a lot of time connecting dots, peeling onions, creating insight. You are this way because in 1994, your mother did this thing and it wounded you. And I think that from my perspective, some of that can help people create a more compassionate narrative of themselves and of their partner. But at the end of the day, you're right. It really doesn't matter at all. It turns into, what are we going to do about this? What do people want? I love this.
I think we have confused in our field of psychotherapy, psychology, the helping professions. We have confused insight with healing as if the two things are synonymous, and they are not. Insight is a fine thing. My cup has a very naturally sweetened drink. But if I were drinking if this was full of vodka and I drank 6 of these a day and I spent most of my day inebriated, and then I went to you for your psychotherapy services, and you helped me uncover that the reason I drank 6 vodka things a day is because my mom didn't hug me enough, or my dad was abusive, or whatever. I've gained insight, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything is going to change. That doesn't necessarily mean anything's going to change in my life. Like I recently, so I'll be a little bit personal here, but I recently was diagnosed with high blood sugar to the point where my doctor was concerned. And, as you said earlier, I do a lot of stuff and I travel everywhere and I'm lecturing and I'm just really busy. And I got concerned that in my busyness, I'm not working out as much as I should. Eating too many meals in airport food courts. And I'm going to go to the doctor just to make sure I'm okay. And I had like a full everything, blood draw, EKG machine, whole 9 yards. And the doctor said, like, you're really, really healthy. Like, there's nothing really concerning, except your alarmingly high blood sugar level. We got to get it down. And he didn't say how to get it down. He just said, this is the issue. Your blood sugar is high. And if I were you, I'd be really concerned about it.
Now what?
Okay. Right. He didn't say, here are some hypoglycemic foods. He didn't say, here's the impact of walking or running or cardiovascular.
Yeah.
He didn't say any of that. Like, just identifying the problem, while I recognize it can be a part of a process, I'm not in any way trying to say that it doesn't, but in and of itself, identifying a problem does literally nothing. There has to be other steps connected to it. And the way that therapy has traditionally functioned is, number one, like I said earlier, we confuse insight with healing. So if a client comes to therapy, I remember one of my colleagues at a job I used to have, she had a client who had an eating disorder. And she came out of the session with this client, like, so excited. And I was like, what happened? We were able to process where her eating disorder came from. And I was like, okay.
Then what happened?
And right, like just because we know the origin of the eating disorder, we think, oh, we've made this discovery. Well, that particular client continued to struggle with eating disorder. In fact, it got worse because this particular client, now that I know my eating disorder stems from the way my mother treated food when I was growing up, now she was very, very upset and like shame because that's the mother I had, which triggered the eating disorder to get worse. And I just think we have to do a better job of understanding that insight can be a part of the process, but insight in and of itself is not healing. And then the second thing I think we do in therapy is we've kind of convinced ourselves that the only way to solve a problem is to start by unpacking and understanding the problem. And while that is one way to do it, that is certainly not the only way to do it. And we know that. Like, whenever I talk about this stuff, like, this is not groundbreaking stuff. We know this. Like, and we know it in fields other than psychotherapy. For example, if I hired a financial planner and I said, I'm 49 years old. Oh, I'm about to turn 49. So I'm 48 years old. And I want you to help me. And specifically, I want you to help me gain more wealth, build my portfolio, whatever you would say. And if my financial planner said, I'd love to talk to you about those things. But before I do, let's unpack how you lived in poverty when you were a child. And let's go over how you went broke. That is not useful. That is not useful at all in that capacity. Right? Or what if I said to I went to a gym and I said to a personal trainer, my doctor just said I have high blood sugar and I need to lose some weight and I need to keep my body moving, do some cardiovascular activity. If that personal trainer said to me, yep, Elliott, I'm happy to help, but before I can help you, I need to unpack how your blood sugar got high. The two things are not related. The personal trainer can do their job effectively without having any knowledge whatsoever as to how my blood sugar got high. They're not related. I got to go to the dentist in a couple of days, maybe even tomorrow, actually. And the dentist is going to clean my teeth. They're not going to ask me how my teeth got dirty because that's not related to the performance of their job. And I think therapists have to start acknowledging that the problem the client brings to therapy is not related to the solution, even though sometimes I struggle with that word, but to the solution with which they would be in seek of. Like, it's not related to the future in which they want to be living their life. And we have to stop acting like they're just like definitely related, and we have to understand the problem before we do anything else.
I love this. Okay, so we are now best friends, and I am inviting you onto my other podcast, which is Love, Happiness, and Success for Therapists, to say exactly what you did to many of the professionals that need to hear it. No, but seriously, I mean, that is why now a big part of my mission is actually teaching evidence-based coaching psychology to professional therapists to give them a different way to help people be now in that coaching is not appropriate for treatment of mental health conditions. We need to stick in the therapy lane for that, but that there is a more actionable path forward, because you're right. Insight is not enough. I tell my clients all the time, you telling me how you feel about this is not going to change anything for you. So let's then talk about what will, from your perspective. I mean, you have so many years of experience in helping people change their relationships, change their lives, change their outcomes. What have you learned about what really is a better way, a more direct way?
It's a really simple answer. Like that, people like you, Lisa, you're so smart and so educated and so experienced and so skilled in what you do. I think sometimes people expect that someone like you will deliver some complicated answer to a simple question like what you just said, simply because you are capable of understanding complex things. The question you just asked me, in my understanding, is a very simple question, and I'm going to give you a very simple answer. Like, if insight is not enough, like, what is the thing that leads to the most consistent change? And that thing is hope. It is unquestionable that you have to have a conversation that contains hope. If your conversation does not contain hope, and by the way, I don't care if we're talking about like a coach working with a client, a psychotherapist working with a client, a parent talking to their child, a partner talking to their other partner. Hope is the keyest ingredient to human change of anything. And I think sometimes we forget how important hope is. But if you want someone to I hesitate to use the word change, but if you want someone to grow and evolve and elevate, make sure you have hope as a center point of the conversation you're having.
That's powerful and true. I mean, in my experience, the reason why relationships fail is not because of the one specific thing. It is because people have lost hope that it will ever be different. That is why people get divorced.
I'll tell you, I completely agree with that. And I'll tell you, I think the number one reason people come to therapy is because they've lost hope their partner can change naturally or through their own interaction. Oftentimes people say something to me that I think is just, every therapist that says this, I'm like, please stop saying this. They say that the client came to therapy too late. There's literally no such thing as too late. It feels too late because the client came to therapy at a place in their life when they no longer have hope that their partner can be the person they want them to be. But the reason they think that, remember I said earlier, the number one reason relationships struggle is because one imperfect human marries another. And the reason they think that my partner can't change or grow is because relationships have very low acuity to them, very low acuteness. And what I mean by that is, if I wake up tomorrow and I said, I'm going to be the worst driver ever, I'm going to break every driving law imaginable. I'm going to drive on the wrong side of the road. I'm going to speed. I'm going to drive drunk. Every law of driving, I'm going to break. I probably would die within an hour. I would probably get into a fatal car crash within an hour. If I went to work tomorrow and I said, I'm going to be the worst employee in the history of bad employees, that's just what I'm going to do, I would probably be fired by the end of the day. But if I decide to be the worst partner in the world, I won't die that same day and I won't get fired that same day. So what happens, like, let's say I decide to be the worst partner in the world tomorrow. And normally, I bring my partner coffee in the morning, or, I go get the newspaper for her or him or whatever it is. And on this day, I'm going to stop doing everything. The relationship doesn't end that day. The partner just notices. And after a couple of weeks, they try to get you to go back to being how you used to be. And after a couple of months, they notice you're not going back and they get frustrated. And by the time they come to therapy, they've exhausted all of their abilities to get their partner to change on their own. So then they come to, Dr. Lisa or Bobby, and they're like, hey, will you help me with this?
He won't listen to me, but maybe he'll listen to you, I think is like the
Correct.
belief.
Or they say something even more extreme. They say something like, I've decided to end the relationship. I'm just here in therapy so that you can help my partner to process it. Well, that's not really, like, what they're actually saying is, I've lost so much hope that the only option I can see is ending the relationship. Well, I think the number one job of in this case, clinician or the coach or the whatever, is to infuse some hope into the situation. And maybe the relationship will not survive. And that's fine. People have free choice. But in my experience, 90% of the time, more than 90% of the time, they start opening their eyes to maybe it can be a different experience.
So tell us a story of transformation. This couple walks into Elliott Connie's counseling room and they have lost hope. How do you even begin to reignite that?
The couple that just popped in my head, and I was going to just start telling a story, but I was like, I'm talking a lot. I mean, this is a really touching experience. I could almost get emotional. When I think about this couple, I get emotional, and you'll understand why in a minute. I'm trying to think how long ago this was. But anyway, a long time ago, I saw this couple, and they were mandated to come and see me through the court. This couple had divorced, and they had a young child, let's say eight-year-old boy, and they came to see me through the mandate of the court. Now, I said earlier, it's not really my thing to unpack problems. And most therapists, they start their therapy with a problem question. 99% of all therapy sessions start with the question, what brings you in today? But we, doing solution-focused group therapy, we don't do that. We ask, what are your best hopes from being here? Because instead of asking about a problem, we want to start the conversation by asking about an outcome. So this couple comes in, mandated by the court, and I said, what are your best hopes from being here? And the husband picked up a manila envelope. I'm looking around to see if I have one. Picked up a thick manila envelope. And he was shaking. He was so angry. And he gestured the manila envelope towards me, and he said, I need all of this to stop. And he explained that the manila envelope was filled of Child Protective Services reports. Because as they go back and forth with custody, whenever the mom gets the child back, she will literally report the dad to Child Protective Services for things like excessive mosquito bites. So she's always accusing him of these horrific wrong things, to which he's saying, I'm not doing anything. She's just being really nasty to me. And then she told me that, he's being nasty to me, and it went back and forth. And I asked them, remember, hope is the single most important thing you could ever do. And if you want to talk to someone about hope, you have to, by mandate, you must talk to them about the future. Hope lives in the future. That's its home. So if you want to go visit hope, you have to go visit it in the future, because that's where hope lives. So I asked this couple, I said to the husband, let's suppose she stops doing these things. What difference do you think it would make? Both of them said, we want to be the best parents we can be for our child. And I said, how would you know you were being the best parent you could be? What would be happening? Now, these are people who can't stand to be in the same room together. This long history of battles. So how would you know that you were being the best parent you could be for your son? And they eventually, they talked about we need to get along better and we need to, go to birthday parties together. Like they literally did nothing together. After about 3 sessions of talking about what change would look like and them being the best version of themselves for their kiddo, after about 3 sessions, they, after one of the sessions, there was a movie coming out at the time. So this will tell you about how long ago this was. There was a movie coming out at the time called Finding Nemo. And the son really wanted to go see Finding Nemo. And for the first time in many, many years, they had a conversation about us taking the child to see Finding Nemo instead of which parent is going to do it. And whenever we had a conversation about which parent is going to do it, then it provoked anger and resentment because the other parent would be frustrated. It was terrible. But it was the first time in years they're talking about, we take the child to see Finding Nemo. So they did. They asked the young boy, do you want to bring your friends? The young boy agreed to bring his friends, and they bring the young boy and his friends to see the movie Finding Nemo. But here's where it gets funny. The young boy didn't want to sit next to his parents because he didn't think that was cool.
It's not.
So he said to his, So he said to his parents, I'm going to sit with my friends. Can you guys sit like a row or two behind us? And we'll eat popcorn and candy and all the live long day. So the parents did. They agreed to do it. And at some point, while watching the movie Finding Nemo, they started holding hands. They come back to the next session. What was better? How was the movie? And they said it was nice. And it was nice to get along. They didn't say anything romantic or anything. They said it was nice to get along. So how did you know you were getting along? They told me they held hands. And I was like, when was the last time that happened? It's been several years, blah, blah, blah. So we continued to have session. And around the 5th session, they said, is it unusual for people like us to want to go on a date? And I said, no, of course it's not unusual. And we talked about what going on a date would look like. Eventually, that couple remarried. And they spent about 10 years happily married. And I was working at an agency when I saw this couple. And 10 years later, I have my own practice and I'm traveling the world giving lectures, writing books. And I get a phone call from the woman. And she says, I need to thank you. I said, how come? And she explained to me that we had 10 years of happiness and joy and our child is great. And she talked about how wonderful their lives were. And I was like, oh, you're welcome. I was just doing my job. So thank you for letting me know. And she said, last week, my husband passed away. He was a factory worker, and he fell into a machine that was 10,000 degrees, melting steel or whatever, and perished. And I just broke down. I started crying. And for her to say that going to that therapy gave us 10 years of happiness. And I remember it started with, they were about as angry and resentful and all the things that we learn in graduate school, these couples are doomed. But when you have enough hope, there's no such thing as doom.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that story. It's a beautiful story, but I'm also imagining that you've given so many of the friends here with us right now, listening to this conversation, a lot of hope for their own relationship. And
I hope so.
That's incredible.
Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how bad or dark things seem or how bleak things seem. There's always hope for a new experience. If you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to put forth the effort.
Let's talk about that part. And I don't know if you get into this in either of your books. I am genuinely curious. So, because, you have, again, the solution-focused marriage, 5 simple habits that will bring out the best in your relationship. There's also change your questions, change your future. And in my experience, a big obstacle to happy endings, like the one that you described, can be one partner sometimes both partners, blaming the other person for their own feelings and actions. And what you're describing right now requires a lot of personal responsibility, because you're talking about, what would it look like to have a nice time at the movies or whatever? And it can be very easy for people to be like, well, he would need to not, blah, 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 as opposed to this place of, what would I need to do on my side of the equation in order to have a nice time at the movies? Take us into that.
Excuse me. Well, first of all, you're 100% right. But to me, this is articulating the biggest difference between like problem-focused therapies and solution-focused brief therapy. So, for example, let's say that couple, and it's been too many years, I don't remember exactly how they described what it would look like for them to go to the movie theater, but I'll never forget them saying that they held hands. Yeah. If I were to say, so how would you guys notice that you were getting along with the movie? Lisa, you're 1,000% right. It is not uncommon for a couple to say, well, we'd be getting along if he wasn't a jerk, or we'd be getting along if she wasn't a jerk. And then as a clinician, I got to think about, like, what do I do here? And this is the moment, right? Like, it's so easy to be like, well, you have to own your own feelings and, all those things. But instead, what we say is, instead of him being a jerk or her being a jerk, how would you rather be experiencing them? Well, I'd rather they be kind. What's the type of thing that, should they do it, you'd experience it as kind? Well, if you bought me popcorn, I'd experience that as kind. And let's imagine on this excursion to the movie theater with our son, you buy her popcorn. When you received the popcorn, how would you let him know that an equally kind version of you has received the popcorn? And in that question, I have forced her to take accountability for her own actions without saying it.
Okay.
Right? So I would just say, so let's imagine he does that. He goes and he gets your popcorn. You guys have been married in the past, so he knows you like your popcorn with extra butter or no salt, whatever. He knows how you want your popcorn. When he came back and handed you the popcorn, how would you let him know that an equally kind person has received the popcorn? She then must talk about her own behavior. She then must talk about her own attitude. She then must talk about her own response. I hate to use the word force, but it's almost like we give no other option except accountability through the way that we ask questions.
Wow. Do you teach other therapists solution-focused brief therapy for couples? Because I hope you do.
I do. That's kind of all I do, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, this is very inspiring. And if you're open to it, I would be interested to talk with you more about those applications. But, coming back to somebody who, might have tuned in to this conversation today because their relationship is in a really bad place and maybe they have started to lose some hope. It is feeling frustrated. They can't say a thing. Their partner reacts in a way that they feel surprised. Communication feels like it's breaking down. It's difficult to solve problems together. There's always this push-pull. It feels fraught. People start to feel hopeless, right? Like they've tried everything that they know how to do to improve their relationship. And I would be curious to hear some of the things you would share, teach people, like things to even experiment with that could help them feel more hopeful and maybe start getting better results.
So yes, here's what I'm going to ask. If anybody out there is in a relationship, it doesn't have to be a bad or troubled relationship, just a relationship you'd like to see improve. Mm-hmm. What I would love for you to do. So human beings are very, very predictable. It's almost weird how predictable we are. So if you're in a relationship and you're unsatisfied, you want to see things get better, here's the experiment I want you to do. I want you to study your partner. And I mean, really pay attention to them. As if you don't already know them super well, but I want you to really study.
Get curious.
Get deeply curious. Don't even tell them you're doing it. I just want you to really watch them. And the things that make them happy, I want you to do those things. If your partner's favorite food is spaghetti, make them or go buy their favorite spaghetti. If they love a particular form of ice cream, go get that form of ice cream and put it in the refrigerator. If they really like watching a particular TV show, invite them to sit on the couch with you and watch this particular TV show.
Let's do this for a second. Let's role play. I'm that partner you're talking to. And my response to that, do you know how mean he has been to me? Why should I be so nice to him when I am the innocent victim here? Let me tell you about all of the things that I have experienced from this person and why I'm so mad at them.
In a role play, I would ask them to tell me all the ways that they've been mad. They
don't share their popcorn. My kid gets mosquito bites and they won't hold my hand.
Perfect. And has that impacted you as a partner?
Yes, I'm very mad.
And when you got married to your partner, did you want to one day later describe yourself as the very mad version of yourself? How did you want to describe yourself?
Happy.
Like if I were to interview on your wedding day, and I said, in the future, how do you want to describe your attitude and your way of being as a spouse?
Happy, loving, loved, respected, cared for.
Okay. So one of the things that stands out to me about you saying that is, I think you're right. Your husband has been mean and has done some unkind things, and I'm on board with that. But I also think it's kind of unfair that you've allowed his actions to change how you are as a spouse. Like you've allowed his actions to dictate who you are as a wife. Because you just told me on your wedding day you would have wanted to be happy and loving and all those things. And I don't think it's fair that just because he's been a jerk, you're now reciprocating jerk. And I've got an idea. Because human beings are reciprocal in nature, if his jerky attitude has created a more jerky attitude in you, I wonder what would happen if your wonderful attitude, how do you think that would impact him? So if jerkiness from him created jerkiness in you, what would warm and loving in you create in him?
It's powerful. We could keep going.
But that's the point. Right. It's like, and by the way, if a woman told me that they were being like abused,
of course,
or then I wouldn't do this. But just someone that's like, they don't leave the toilet seat down anymore, and they've drifted away from me, or that sort of stuff. Like, then I want you to get super curious about your partner, and be the most loving, kind person, not because they deserve it, but because you do.
Yeah.
The actual crime of relationship, dysregulation is it's changed you from being who you want to be. So all I'm saying is go back to being who you want to be. And there's only two outcomes and both of them are positive. Number one, if you were in a relationship with that mean person and they really like Rocky Road ice cream, so I'm going to go buy some and make sure it's in the refrigerator. They really like Seinfeld. So every night I'm going to sit down on the couch and ask if you want to pull up Netflix and watch an episode of Seinfeld. If I know that they really like it when I go to bed with them, like I tend to stay up later. So our habit has become they go to bed early, then a couple hours later I go to bed early. But they really like when I go to bed with them so we can cuddle before bed. So I'm going to do that. Like you do the things, then I'm going to say to you, and as you do these things, I want you to observe and watch for evidence of reciprocation. Because human beings are incredibly reciprocal. We literally can't help it, which is exactly why when he started being a jerk, you started being a jerk. That's just reciprocation working in the negative. So if you are being the kindest, warmest, gentlest, most generous version of you, then that triggers reciprocation going in the positive way. So as you do these things, I want you to observe for evidence of reciprocation. And you can look for the simple, smallest things. Maybe your husband will walk by you and run his hands across the small of your back, and you'll realize, oh, he hasn't done that in a while. Or maybe you'll wake up one day and the husband has cleaned the bathroom after you've bugged him about it for all that time. Or maybe the husband will make you your favorite meal because you made his, or whatever. But human beings are very reciprocal. Yeah. So that's one outcome. The husband will reciprocate in some level, but you have to like really watch for it because it usually starts super small. So you have to really watch for it. The other outcome is the husband does not reciprocate. No matter how much you watch, no matter how small it is, the husband or wife does not reciprocate. Well, then you can have an open conversation about whether or not this is a healthy relationship for me to be in. But I can tell you from doing this very basic, simple exercise, way over 90% of the time, they come back and they say, my partner's texting me more. And they're not texts about like, did you take the trash out? Who's picking up the kids today? Did you pay this bill or that bill? They're texts like, hey, how's your day going? I didn't ask him to do that or her to do that. But people come back and they say those things simply because love starts growing when you attend to it. And what we do in relationships is we find ourselves unsatisfied and we look for the problems and try to remove them instead of looking for the love and trying to expand it. And to me, literally, if you're listening to this and you just do this, you just implement this, you're going to have a higher than 90% success rate.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for talking us through that and sharing that. And now, if somebody wanted to keep going with this, would they look for more in the Solution Focused Marriage book?
Yeah, you can find more in the Solution Focused Marriage.
Okay. And you guys, again, Elliott Connie is who you're looking for. I want to pivot a little bit because you have a whole new book that has come out more recently, the Change Your Questions, Change Your Future. Is that also part of what we've been talking about? Or do you take us into a different direction with this new book?
No, it's real. I would say the answer is both. This is part of what we're talking about because look, are you in a relationship?
I am. Lisa? I've been married forever. Ever.
What is your partner's name? Matt. So this is the name of the newest book is Change Your Questions, Change Your Future. And I want to give you an example of why changing your questions is so important. Okay. You and Matt have been in a relationship forever. And if Matt were to change in a negative way, or if you were to change in a negative way, the questions we start asking ourselves, like if I'm mad, I'm like, what's wrong with Lisa? Sometimes we go in our own heads, what did I do wrong? Where am I screwing up? Like we struggle in these ways. But I think a better question is, what does Lisa need right now? Or even more specifically, what does Lisa need right now from me? What could I do today to make Lisa smile? What's something that I could do to express to Lisa I still love her? Because those are different questions. Yeah. And if I start asking myself, like, what's wrong with Lisa? Then I'm going to start noticing all the problems about Lisa. Mm-hmm. Lisa's going to feel judged. Lisa's going to feel shame. Lisa's going to feel guilt. But if I say to Lisa, I notice you've been struggling, so I made your favorite meal because I just wanted to make sure you smiled today. Lisa doesn't feel any of those things. And she feels loved and cared for. And marriage, if you want it to work, I have to prove to my partner that I love her on her worst day. Like if you want to have a successful relationship, that's the key is to let that person know, I love you on your worst day. On your worst day, I'm still happy with you. Instead of the opposite, which is, why are you in such a funky, foul mood? I need you to change that. Yeah. So for me, that is like the keyest of the keyest things. So
I bet there's somebody listening to this right now being like, man, that's all I've ever wanted is for my partner to think about how I'm feeling and what would make me happy and love me on my worst day. And I feel like our culture has shifted in a direction a bit. There's a lot of therapy speak running around, like me getting my needs met. 100%. And this tendency to become I say this with love and respect, people, but like a little bit self-focused. Like, yes, I really want somebody to treat me this way. And a lot, it's challenging for people to be like, yeah, what does Matt need from me today? And like, take that as it's my job to be doing that instead of wanting that from somebody else. Cause I feel like that can be a big disconnect. And I will also say, and let me back up. Psychotherapy can be so powerful and healing. Mental health issues are real. Many forms of treatment are valid. But I think that there is also a flow in our culture right now that therapists perpetuate, where many people come into individual therapy and they complain about their partners and like reinforce this narrative. And now the therapist is like, oh my goodness, armchair diagnosing of the partner and going into the problem focus and about how, their wounds are showing up. I mean, like there can be so many different, almost systemic barriers now getting in the way of people's personal responsibility and this blaming my own issues or somebody else's issues. Like, how do you fight through this? Because it really is so simple.
Right? Yes, it really is so simple. And it's by understanding that when I get into a relationship with a person, I've signed up to make their happiness my job. And I don't think enough people are honest with themselves. We think like, does Lisa deserve my kindness today? And the answer is yes, she does. Because her happiness, her mood, her dreams are now my responsibility. That's the game. And you can't worry about, like, relationships are this is what scares people, I think. But when you understand this, your relationship becomes almost indestructible. Your relationship has to be the most selfless thing you do. I have to pour into Lisa, if I'm Matt, I have to pour into Lisa without any expectation of anything. I'm simply pouring into Lisa because it's my job. That's it. I'm pouring into Lisa because it's my job. I cannot worry or wonder whether or not Lisa reciprocates and pours back into me. I just have to do it because it's my job. X number of years ago, I decided to marry Lisa. And on that day when I did that, that person's happiness and in fact, her very dreams became my job. So I'm going to pour into Lisa. But that's not what human behavior does. We become victims of the reciprocal nature of human beings instead of using this reciprocal nature of human beings to achieve something. For example, like at some point, Lisa, you were sitting around and you thought to yourself, I really want to launch a podcast. And if you had gone to Matt and you said, hey, I really want to launch a podcast, can we spend some of our money on microphones and recording equipment? And if Matt says, no, you didn't help me with my project 6 years ago when I wanted to start such and such a company, he would be right. Because you don't deserve my help because you didn't give it to me. But people have healthy relationships. Don't worry about that. They just say, yes. Assuming we have the money for the microphones and things. Yes, we're going to go get the recording equipment. Yes, we're going to go get the microphones because my job is to help you achieve your goals. And when you do that, then you're taking control of the reciprocal nature of human beings instead of being victimized by it.
Yeah.
And that to me it's really that simple. I have to selflessly pour into Lisa.
Right.
And Lisa will reciprocate it.
Yeah. Or not, which is a different type of solvable problem.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. But this is so good. And I'm really glad that you're saying this out loud because this is the meta underneath, I think, a lot of relationship problems that goes sometimes unspoken or sometimes is colluded with. And, I could imagine a lot of our listeners right now feeling upset with this conversation coming to, but my boundaries, but my people pleasing, but I give too much. I, am so selfless in relationships. I am a doormat in the situation. When do you realize that you're being taken advantage of by another? Like, I think that these are real fears that come up for people. But what I hear you say is this new narrative is that there is a ton of empowerment in taking control over the cycle of reciprocation. And that if this is truly a bad relationship for you, if you 1,000% do your job, you will have the information that you need to know what this really is.
That's true.
And make a different choice. Yeah.
It's absolutely true. And you said something interesting that like people are like, what about my boundaries and my people pleasing? Listen, people pleasing is a habit that far extends beyond your relationship. Like, you cannot view yourself as a people pleaser and use that as an excuse to not please your partner. People pleasing is when I put myself at a detriment to please other people and prioritize other people's moods. I'm not talking about that. I'm not saying make your partner's mood more important than your own. I'm not saying don't use your voice. If your partner says, I want to have chocolate cake for dinner after dinner tonight, you get to say, I'm not in the mood for chocolate cake. I'm not in any way saying don't people please. I am saying, however, my partner's smile is my, I have to help them smile. Like, I have to give them reason to rejoice and be pleased that we're on this journey together. If you are going to use people pleasing as an excuse not to please the people that matter, like your spouse and children, then you are driving your relationship full speed at a brick wall.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make any sense to me. But also, if you want to really test the health of your relationship, do everything you can to make your partner happy and see if they reciprocate by making you happy. If they don't, you're in a relationship that is not satisfying and unhealthy. And it is in fact unhealthy. And you need to make some choices about what to do about that relationship. Therapy could help you. And they can help come up with other strategies to create change. But maybe the relationship needs to be over. But the idea that because I'm a people pleaser, I'm going to stop pleasing all people is utterly insane.
Oh, man. This has been such a powerful and interesting conversation and also fun. You're also just fun to talk to. But you guys, so we've been visiting with my new best friend, Elliott Connie, who is a psychotherapist specializing in solution-focused brief therapy, specifically with couples. He is the author of a couple of books that you should check out. He has, Change Your Questions, Change Your Future. There it is. Change your questions, change your future, overcome challenges, and create a new vision for your life using the principles of solution. So check that out. Additionally, the solution-focused marriage, 5 simple habits that will bring out the best in your relationship. And you can learn more about him and his work on his website, ElliottConnie.com. Amazing.
That's right.
So what else are you up to? Are there other ways that people can connect with you?
Yeah, you can follow me on social media at Elliott Speaks. Make sure you spell my name correctly, 2 L's and 2 T's. At Elliott Speaks across all platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. And hopefully and I've got a YouTube channel. You can find me on YouTube, and we're always producing new stuff and have a few surprises coming up pretty soon.
Oh, surprises. Okay. Check it out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Elliott, such a pleasure. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. This was illuminating and fun.
Thank you for inviting me. It was amazing. It was so nice to meet you.